Okay, I want you to close your eyes for a second. We're going to do a little time travel. It's May 18th, 1980. You're standing in Washington State, looking at the horizon. It's just picturesque. You've got tall pines, clear water, and this huge snow-capped peak, Mount St. Helens.
It looks serene. It looks, permanent.
And then at 8:32 in the morning, the permanence ends.
The mountain effectively deletes itself.
It is so hard to wrap your head around the scale of this. It wasn't just like a landslide.
No, not at all. It was a supersonic blast of hot gas and rock.
And it leveled 230 square miles of forest.
Yeah.
In minutes.
It's one of the most dramatic biological reset buttons ever hit in modern history. I mean, the heat was so intense it didn't just kill the trees.
It vaporized.
It vaporized them. And right near the crater, in this area they call the pumice plain, it left behind a landscape that looked more like the surface of the moon than the Pacific Northwest.
That's the image I can't get out of my head.
Girl.
Gray ash, 6 miles wide, no shade, no soil, no water, and definitely no life.
No.
If you stood there in 1980, you would have bet good money that nothing was going to grow there for a century.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Most scientists at the time essentially made that bet. They looked at the chemistry of the ash and just said, this is sterile. It's hostile to life.
And yet, that's not what happened.
Not even close.
And that is the mystery we are diving into today. How does a biological wasteland turn back into a living forest?
We are going to crack open the source code that nature uses to reboot an ecosystem from zero.
And the cool thing is, we aren't just talking about volcanoes. Whether it's a puddle in your driveway, the Amazon rainforest, or a recovering blast zone, the rules are exactly the same.
It comes down to three things.
We've got the players, the flow, and the trap.
So let's start with the players, because in 1980, on that pumice plain, the roster was empty.
Completely empty. But, nature abhors a vacuum. 2 years later, in 1982, researchers were landing helicopters in this gray dust bowl.
Yeah, they saw something.
They spotted a splash of purple.
The prairie lupine, a single solitary plant. Now you might think, okay, a seed blew in, so what? But this wasn't just luck. This was a specific biological superpower at work.
Right, I was reading about this. If, say, a pine tree seed had landed there, it would have just died.
It would have died.
Yeah.
Instantly. Because there was no soil, just rock dust.
There's no nitrogen.
Zero nitrogen.
Yeah.
But the lupine, it has this incredible hack. It has a symbiotic relationship with bacteria in its roots.
It brings its own lunch.
Basically, it pulls nitrogen directly out of the thin air, which most plants can't do, and fixes it into the ground. It creates its own fertilizer.
So this one plant sets up shop. It grows, it lives, it dies, and when it dies, its leaves rot.
And suddenly, you have a tiny pocket of actual soil.
And that changes the entire game.
It's the spark. Once you have soil, you can have other plants. Once you have plants, you get insects, aphids arrive to eat the lupine.
Then spiders arrive to eat the aphids.
Birds fly in to eat the spiders, and they poop out seeds for dairy bushes.
It's like the lupine kicked open the door, and the rest of the ecosystem just rushed right in.
And within 20 years, that gray moonscape was a young forest. You had mice, shrews, weasels, raptors. It became a complex, functioning society.
Which brings us to the structure of that society. In the research, they categorize every living thing, from the bacteria in the dirt to the eagle in the sky, into 3 specific roles.
Right. And you can't really understand how the forest works unless you know who is playing what part.
So role number 1, and the most important one.
The producers. That's our lupine.
The engine of the entire world.
Literally. Producers are the only organisms that can create value from basically nothing. They take non-living matter, sunlight, carbon dioxide, water, and synthesized sugar.
They make food molecules from scratch.
From scratch.
It's humbling when you think about it. We like to think humans are the masters of the planet, but I can't stand in the sun and make a sandwich.
No, you can't. Physiologically, you are helpless without them.
Which makes me role number 2.
A consumer.
The eaters.
The eaters. Consumers have to steal their energy. We can't make it, so we take it by eating other organisms. And the text breaks this down into the classic categories we all know.
You've got your vegetarians, the herbivores, rabbits, deer, the aphids eating the lupine.
Then the carnivores, the meat eaters, spiders, sharks, frogs.
And the ones who can't decide.
Omnivores?
Yeah.
Like raccoons, bears, and us. We eat everything.
But there's a third role that I feel always gets ignored in these nature documentaries. We focus on the hunting and the growing. But what happens when things die? If the forest has been running for millions of years, why aren't we just buried under miles of dead trees and dinosaur bones.
That is where the decomposers come in.
The cleanup crew.
I actually prefer to think of them as the recycling crew. We're talking fungi, bacteria, slugs, earthworms.
Their job isn't just to make things disappear.
No, their job is to unlock the nutrients trapped in a dead body and return them to the ecosystem.
So if a deer dies in the woods, the decomposers break it down, and that nitrogen and carbon goes back into the soil.
Which creates the fertilizer for the next producer to grow. It turns a straight line into a circle.
And this brings us to a really crucial distinction. You just mentioned nitrogen and carbon cycling. But in the reading, they make a huge deal about the difference between how matter moves and how energy moves.
Yes. If you take one thing away from this deep dive, let it be this distinction. Because in casual conversation, we mix them up all the time.
Right. I say, I need energy, and I eat a burger, which is matter.
Exactly. But ecologically, they follow totally different rules.
So let's break it down. I like to think in analogies. How should we visualize matter?
Think of matter, all the atoms, carbon, nitrogen, water, as a box of Lego bricks.
Okay, Legos, I can work with that.
You build a castle, that's a tree.
Yeah.
A storm comes, knocks it over. You take those same bricks and you build a spaceship. That's a bird.
The bird dies. You take the bricks apart and build a car, that's bacteria. The key is that I never have to go to the store to buy new bricks.
Exactly. The atoms are conserved. The carbon atom in your DNA right now could have been a T-Rex 65 million years ago and part of a fern before that. Matter cycles. It is a closed loop.
But energy is different.
Energy is not a Lego brick. Energy is the battery you put in the car to make it move.
The batteries run out.
They do.
Yeah.
Energy flows. It's a one-way street. It enters the ecosystem as sunlight.
The producers catch it.
Right. It gets passed to the consumers. But, and this is the big catch, at every single step, the battery drains.
It turns into heat, right?
Yes. When you run, when you digest food, even when you think, you are burning chemical energy and releasing it as heat. And once that heat radiates off your body into the atmosphere, it's gone.
You can't get it back.
You can't capture body heat and use it to power a plant.
So while the atoms stay here forever, the energy is constantly escaping into space.
Which is why we need the sun to come up every single morning. If the sun goes out, the flow stops. The Lego bricks are still there, but nothing can move them.
Yeah.
The machine freezes.
That flow concept also explains something else I saw in the notes about boundaries. We tend to draw circles around ecosystems. Here's the forest, here's the lake. But they aren't sealed bubbles.
No, not at all. Boundaries in nature are very porous. Think about the Great Migration in East Africa.
Okay.
You have millions of wildebeest eating grass in the Serengeti, so they're packing on energy and matter, and then they physically walk across the river into Kenya.
They're essentially transporting tons of biological batteries from one ecosystem to another.
Exactly. Or look at something closer to home, bald eagles. In the summer, they might be fishing in a lake deep in the forest. But in the winter, when that lake freezes,
They have to go somewhere else.
they fly out to open farmland or rivers near cities to scavenge. They're moving energy from an aquatic system to a terrestrial one. It's all one giant, leaky, interconnected grid.
So we have the players, producers, consumers, decomposers. We have the rules matter cycles like Legos, energy flows like batteries. Now let's talk about the economics of this forest, because this is where the math gets a little brutal.
The cost of living.
Yeah. We've all seen the diagrams in textbooks. The food chain. Sun goes to flower, flower goes to mouse, mouse goes to snake, snake goes to hawk. A nice, tidy, straight line.
Which is a complete fiction.
Right. I mean, I don't know many hawks that strictly only eat snakes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In reality, it's a food web. It's messy. That hawk eats snakes, sure, but it also eats mice, rabbits, maybe a smaller bird.
And the mouse eats seeds, but maybe it also eats a berry or a bug.
Everything is cross-linked.
But I read that this messiness is actually a good thing.
Oh, it's a safety feature. Imagine if the hawk only ate snakes. If a disease wipes out the snakes, the hawk goes extinct.
But if the hawk has options.
The ecosystem is stable. Diversity is insurance.
But even in a stable web, there are limits. And this is the part of the research that really clicked for me. You look at a nature documentary of the African savanna, you see millions of blades of grass, you see thousands of wildebeest, but you only see like 4 lions. Why aren't there 1,000 lions? There's plenty of meat walking around. Why is the top of the food chain so empty compared to the bottom?
This goes back to our battery analogy. It's called the energy pyramid, or the 10% rule.
Walk us through the math.
Okay. Let's say a mouse eats 100 calories of lupine seeds. Does the mouse keep all 100 calories?
No. Being a mouse is hard work. It has to run from owls, dig burrows, keep its body warm.
Exactly. It burns those calories just to stay alive.
Yeah.
That energy is lost as heat. It turns out the mouse only stores about 10% of what it eats as new muscle or fat.
So 90% is just the tax of being alive.
Yes. Now, a weasel comes along and eats the mouse. The weasel doesn't get the energy the mouse burned running around. It only gets the 10% that was stored in the mouse's body.
And then the weasel burns 90% of that running around trying to catch more mice.
Precisely. By the time you get to the top, the lion or the eagle, there's almost no energy left in the system.
There's a great simulation that I know some science classes use to demonstrate this. It's basically a game of tag.
Oh, right. The mouse and weasel game.
Yeah. So you have a class of students. Most of them are mice. A few are weasels. The mice have to run around picking up tokens, let's say pom-poms scattered on the floor.
That's the energy from the plants, standard resource gathering.
But the rule is, every minute you are alive, you have to throw half your pom-poms back in the bin. That's your metabolism. That's the cost of living.
That's stressful. You're working just to break even.
And the weasels, they can only get pom-poms by tagging mice and taking theirs. But the mice have hardly any left because they burned them all running.
So the weasels are starving.
Exactly. The simulation almost always ends with plenty of plants, so leftover pom-poms on the floor, a decent number of surviving mice, and maybe 1 or 2 surviving weasels. The rest just starved.
That's a perfect illustration. It explains the lions. It's not about space, it's about thermodynamics. The energy pyramid gets so narrow at the top that it simply cannot support a crowd.
So being an apex predator sounds cool. You're the king of the jungle, but biologically, it's a very expensive lifestyle.
It is. You are living on the tiny scrap of energy that managed to survive the gauntlet of the food chain.
Which brings us to the final and honestly the darkest part of this deep dive. We've talked about how energy fades as it moves up the chain. You lose it. But there is something else that moves up the chain. And it doesn't fade.
It multiplies.
Biomagnification.
It's one of those terms that sounds like a sci-fi power, but it's actually a trap.
A very dangerous trap. And we need to make sure we don't confuse it with bioaccumulation.
Right. Bioaccumulation is just me personally. If I breathe in some bad air, it accumulates in my lungs over my life.
Correct. That happens within one lifespan. Biomagnification happens across the food chain. It's what happens when the food web interacts with toxins, things like mercury, DDT, or even microplastics.
And this ties back to the math we just did with the 10% rule.
How so?
Well, let's look at the numbers because they are staggering.
Imagine
a tiny aquatic insect living in polluted water. It absorbs just 1 unit of a toxin.
1 unit. Negligible.
Yeah.
The bug probably doesn't even feel it.
Right? But now, a small fish comes along. To survive, because of that 10% energy rule, that fish needs to eat a lot of insects. Let's say it eats 10 insects.
Okay. So the energy from those insects gets burned off as heat. But what happens to the toxin?
The toxin is matter. It's hard chemistry. It doesn't burn off. It stays in the fish's fat. So the fish now has 10 units of toxin.
The concentration just jumped 10 times.
Now a sea lion eats 10 of those small fish.
So 10 times 10, the sea lion has 100 units.
And finally, an apex predator, an orca, eats 10 of those sea lions.
Oh, wow. You're suddenly dealing with 1,000 units of poison.
From a water source that only had 1 unit,
Mm.
that is biomagnification. The higher you are on the food chain, the more toxic your food becomes.
It's the apex paradox.
Yeah.
We fought our way to the top of the food chain because it's safer up there and no one eats us.
Right.
But because we are at the top, we act as a funnel for every poison in the ecosystem below us.
We become the collection vessel. We saw this historically with DDT. We sprayed it on crops to kill bugs. It washed into the water.
The plankton got it.
The fish got it. And then suddenly, bald eagles started dropping out of the sky.
Because the concentration in their bodies was millions of times higher than what we sprayed on the field.
Exactly. Their eggshells became so thin they cracked when the parents sat on them. We almost wiped out the national bird because we didn't understand this mechanism.
It really makes you rethink the recovery of Mount St. Helens. We see the resilience, the lupine creating soil from rock, the consumers building this complex web, but we also have to see the fragility.
It's a machine. A beautiful, complex machine that recycles matter and burns energy. But like any machine, if you pour sand in the gears or toxins in the water, it grinds to a halt.
And usually the first thing to break is the part at the top.
Us.
It really reframes how you look at throwing something away.
Well, remember the Lego bricks. There is no away. Matter cycles.
Right. If I throw a plastic bottle in the ocean, it doesn't disappear. It breaks down into microplastics. A plankton eats it. A shrimp eats the plankton. A tuna eats the shrimp. And then
You buy the tuna.
I buy the tuna.
You're essentially mailing your trash to your future self to eat.
That is a haunting but accurate way to put it.
It is.
Yeah.
But that's the reality of a closed loop.
Well, on that cheerful note, but seriously, it's a powerful lens to view the world. Whether it's a volcano recovery or your own lunch, the rules remain the same. The flow of energy and the cycling of matter drive everything.
Absolutely. It's the engine of life.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. It's a lot to chew on.
Always a pleasure.
See you in the next one.